Hi, it's Penny here. Welcome to another reading vlog. So this week, what is happening? We are trying not to be stressed. However, there's an event happening at the end of the week regarding selling my house that is probably going to be stressful regardless. So let's distract ourselves with some reading. The main thing I'm going to be trying to read this week is Malice by Gwynne. So this is the first book in the Faithful and the Fallen series, I think. I'm mostly picking this up now so that I can be part of Becca in the Box's read-along thing she's doing. And I don't know how I feel about it. This is a much hyped series, kind of Norse mythology and Viking inspired. I have read, I think, the prologue and about a chapter and a half. And none of the characters are really pulling me in yet, and I don't feel like any of them are doing anything interesting, but also this is a fairly long book, so I feel like it's going to take some time to get going and to really understand what's happening. So I'll try to be patient, and hopefully I can end up loving it as much as so many other people do. As well, I am listening to the audiobook of Station 11. I started this in my last reading vlog and I'm about 2/3 of the way through, so I just have the last bit to go. To be honest, it's not my favorite. Kind of has this very high level writing style that's like skipping over events that I don't really like. And it's kind of told like through multiple perspectives and like non-linearly in a way that's making it hard for me again to become invested in the characters' stories. As well, I was told this was going to be like a post-apocalyptic, like post-pandemic story following this traveling theatre group. And once again, like a lot of these literary books, that's a tiny part of it. More of it is about this actor and his ex-wives and some other people he's connected to and kind of their experience leading up to the pandemic, and then as the pandemic hits, and there's only a tiny bit of these younger people kind of living post-pandemic as civilization is broken down. Although I'm thinking of some others like Severance where we didn't get as much of what I thought we were going to get and I was annoyed about that. But in this one, I'm actually happy with getting less of that post-apocalyptic bit because it's the bit I'm the least interested in, weirdly. So anyway, I'll finish off the last third of that and then I'll let you know my final thoughts on that. And hopefully that means I will also be able to get to my next audiobook where I'm going to start the Edged novels by Ilona Andrews. So Ilona Andrews is one of my favorite authors. You can see I've got the Kate Daniels series here. And I have also this year read the Innkeeper Chronicles. Oh, and last year I think I read the Hidden Legacy series by Ilona Andrews. So I'm getting pretty complete in my Ilona Andrews reading. So I'm excited to be picking up that series. I guess I'll tell you more about it when we finally get to it. That's going to be the reading for the week. Hopefully we can have a good time with it. Hopefully by the end of the week we won't be crying about our lives. But I guess that's the hope for every week, right? Hello, so I just got back from my run where I finished Station 11 and I'm trying to think about what do I want to say about it. I can definitely see why people like it. I think the ending was a bit strange. It kind of introduces this like more action element, which in some ways ties a lot of different threads together, but I just felt like it didn't seem to fit well with the rest of the tone of the book. And even though I think it's trying to end in kind of a hopeful way, I wish it had focused more on that hope rather than this weird action thing that almost made me feel the opposite, like unhopeful about the future of humanity. I will say as well, like some of this book really had me thinking, would it be better if civilization broke down? Like I know we would lose a lot, but we would definitely gain some things as well, right? So I don't know. I mean, probably not for the best, but also maybe. Anyway, I think really the thing I find a lot when I read these like more like either literary books or thrillers that have like sci-fi or fantasy elements to them, which is not the same as like fantasy or sci-fi books that have literary or contemporary elements in them. Not at all. Because I feel like when it's a literary or a thriller book that has these other elements, when you read it as a sci-fi or fantasy reader, it always feels like it's not taking the ideas far enough. And so I feel like I always end up getting frustrated, and I see a lot of other fantasy and sci-fi readers kind of having the same experience, that these like literary and thriller readers will be like, wow, this was amazing. It had these cool fantasy and sci-fi elements. And then you pick it up as a fantasy and sci-fi reader and you're like, why didn't it do anything with those sci-fi and fantasy elements. And it's probably not fair. Like, it is doing things, it's just doing literary and thriller things rather than fantasy and sci-fi things. And for me, I generally like ideas and the way that they're explored more through exploring the fantasy and the sci-fi ideas. Like, I feel like fantasy and sci-fi are at their best when they're able to really like dig into the idea, take you along on the journey, and see how these ideas could affect like the world and humanity. And maybe Station 11 did that a little bit, but not completely. I do actually think, I've just remembered, I don't have my phone to check it, which is concerning because where is my phone? Anyway, I'm sure it's somewhere. I lose it 5 times a day at least. I think though, Station 11 was going to be made into a movie or a TV show, and I think that could be cool, but I also feel like it would have the same problems that I had, where, especially with that weird action element, like how do you bring that in but somehow keep the pacing of the series working right? I don't know. But anyway, it was fine. I still enjoyed it. I can see why a lot of people love it, but for me, it's probably kind of forgettable. Although part of that is also that this was written pre-COVID, so a lot of the ideas that it's exploring are things that we've now lived, so obviously they're not new ideas anymore, but they would have been like quite insightful at the time. Anyway, the other thing I've been reading is Malice, and my co is saying I'm 12% in and I've got 12 hours to go. And my question is, when does this get good? Because so far I'm kind of bored, and I'm reminding myself that this is a debut novel and that probably the series gets better, but also I'm hoping the book gets better because so far all of the characters we've been introduced to haven't seemed that interesting. There's like a young boy who wants to be a soldier but keeps being disappointed in himself for like not taking action when he's in trouble. There's another kind of younger man who's just joined this war band. Some other boring guys doing boring things to do with battles. Do you know, I think anyone who loves this series would be like, why are you picking up this book if you don't like those things? But I just thought it would be more than just these young guys who want to be part of a war and then that's it. Well, there's stuff happening, but none of it's interesting yet. There was a bit where this young boy went off into the forest and I thought, oh, when he comes back, his whole town's going to be dead, because it seemed like that's what it was setting up, because honestly, the reason why he went into the forest was pretty weak. And so I thought that must be an excuse for something else to happen, and I was sure it was going to be the whole village is dead, but it wasn't. So I'm kind of disappointed that people aren't dead. Really, what I need to happen in this book is some kind of big catastrophic event, because I feel like that's what I was expecting. But so far it's kind of just more like slice of life in the middle of a war, but the war isn't even interesting. I don't know. I'm sure it gets better because everyone says that it gets better, so I will keep reading it and cross my fingers, I guess. Oh, also, tomorrow, we have found out, it is our town's Santa Parade, which will be exciting. So I guess cue the B-roll of the Santa Parade.
Right now nothing's the same. I wish I could see it too. It's been way too long. Wish I could turn back time to see you at Christmas. If only I wish I could see you in front of me. Wish we could decorate the Christmas tree. I wish you could say.
Hello, so over the weekend we did manage to relax and have a nice kind of Christmas-themed weekend, but now it's Monday, back to reality. I spent the morning trying to fill out forms, or like pre-fill out forms for the council in case Friday's building inspection goes well. Then I will need these forms filled out. If it goes badly, then this is all a waste of time. The forms don't really allow for the particular circumstances of my property, so it's a pain in the butt trying to fill it out. Also, like, technically the online like portal is a disaster. Errors all the time, isn't really clear what's going on. Like, anyway, it's an awful time, but I'm working through it. I think now I've finished for the day, but on Wednesday I'm going to ring them up and ask them about all the things that I can't work out how to do it. So that's gonna be super fun. Not really, but let's talk about reading, although this isn't really fun either. So Malice by Gwynne. I'm now 25% of the way through, it says. 10 hours to go. Can I get through 10 hours of this week? Honestly, I'm not sure. Like, I probably, if I didn't have all this council nonsense to deal with, could have spent the morning reading, but once again, that's not reality. So, anyway, Malice, what do I think about it? I still feel like every character is pretty much the same, except like a different age. I feel like a lot of my problem with this is that so many of the stories feel like just coming-of-age stories in this like Viking-inspired culture. So, of course, it's all these young men training to be warriors, and I don't really like coming-of-age stories. I find them incredibly boring. And there is some cool things, like some cool creature things happened just before I went to sleep last night. So like I feel like there's gonna be some cool creepy creature stuff eventually, I hope. Like, this is meant to be the build up to this war between the gods, although the war is really between the humans and the gods are just wanting it to happen. But, you know, I would expect some cool stuff to happen, and so far it's just blah, 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 boring, boring, boring. I don't get it. It has to get better, right? Otherwise, people wouldn't be raving about this. I will keep going, but I really kind of wish I could DNF. Let me check the other thing I was reading. So I did go for a run yesterday as well, and I was listening to On the Edge by Ilona Andrews. So this is the first in a quartet of stories by Ilona Andrews, who's one of my most favorite authors. Did I tell you I was going to be reading this week? I don't know. Anyway, I'm 40% of the way through, and at least one thing is going good in my life. I mean, I love Ilona Andrews, so I'm not surprised I'm enjoying this. I just love the way that they write characters and the way they do world building. The characters feel like super relatable. We're following this girl named Rose who lives in the Edge. So the idea is that we have the broken, which is our world where there's no magic, and there's also the weird, where there's lots of magic. And then in between is the edge, and only certain people are able to kind of exist in the edge, where it's kind of just a little bit of magic. Unfortunately, Rose is quite powerful in a way that has drawn some unwanted attention. Near the beginning of the book, basically, she met this noble who has a lot of magic in his blood, and he really wants her to be his wife purely well, it's not entirely clear what his intentions are, but we're assuming, or Rose is assuming, that it's because he just wants her power entered into his bloodline. She doesn't want to go along with that. I think what I really love about Ilona Andrews' writing is so often they do like these typical alpha male tropes with the male characters, but the women in the stories are just never putting up with that shit. They're like calling them out for it constantly. They're like, you have to respect me and trust me to look after myself. And so often these women are very capable and competent. Although admittedly in this story, Rose is struggling because she was born in the Edge. She doesn't really have any proper documentation. So she's like, you know, an illegal immigrant when she's in America trying to get a job, which makes it very hard for her to like earn a living and provide for her younger siblings. So she's dealing with like just trying to make ends meet and pay the bills, as well as this guy trying to marry her, as well as like all these other people trying to take advantage of her, as well as now there are these like creepy monsters, magical monsters showing up on the Edge. So it's just so much fun. I love just the sense of humor of these books. It's the same as all the Ilona Andrews books. It's kind of, I feel like just like a realistic, like real life sense of humor rather than anything ridiculous or over the top. And the characters are super relatable, and it's just a fun time. There's always great momentum, which, like with Malice, I don't think there's any momentum. But these books, even though, you know, I'm sure a lot of people would kind of write them off just as silly paranormal romance. And of course there is a romance, but there's so much more to the story as well. I'm honestly having such a great time with it. And I actually think I'm going to try and finish it off on my next run. I thought that was possible. Now I'm doubting myself. Actually, it's saying about 3.5 hours of actual listening time. Even if I muck around on a run, that's probably excessive. But I should definitely be able to finish off this first book this week. And then I am just going to binge the whole series this month because I think that's what I need. So I have not gotten very much further into Malice. It's now saying 36% of the way through. However, I've had like a tiny breakthrough with it. What I realized when I got to 33% is that 30% through is where the book should start. Like just delete that first 30%. Anything that happened in that bit, like that was important, which is not most of it. Like the few important things could have been like retrofit into the rest of the story. And if it had started at a third of the way through, Corbin would have been a much more interesting character doing something interesting. Viridius could have been also a different character doing something different. I don't know. Should I try and tell you like mild spoilers, I guess, but I'll try and keep it very mild. Corbin is doing this like wolven cub kind of thing. That would have been super interesting as a starting point. Viridius is coming home and like hoping that his family is going to appreciate everything he's achieved. And then who's the other guy? Castell? I don't know. I think he's still boring, but like that also would have been fine to start from later. And then there is also, I guess, Evnus, who has this problem with his wife being sick. Again, could have started from a third of the way through. Like I just think cut the first third off. It would have been a 400-page book instead. It would have been much better. I also suspect, given the way that it's going, that a lot of it could have been edited out. This is probably a 300-page book for some reason, existing as a 600-page book. Anyway, it definitely has improved though, but I'm still probably not loving it. I will say I do love Brenna and her crow. So she's like a local healer that Corbin is learning from. I like her a lot. She's probably the only character that is even a little bit interesting. Maybe Gar, but he's mostly interesting because of the mystery of what's going on with him. And will it be anything? Who really knows? Anyway, that's Malice. At least I'm getting somewhere with it. Oh, although I have a problem with it, which is that it's due back at the library in 8 days. The ebook is going to return itself because there's more people in the whole queue. So really, I have to finish this in 8 days or otherwise I'm going to have to go back on the whole queue. So I don't know if I can do that, given additional stress going on with council stuff, but I guess we'll see. The other thing I was doing was listening to On the Edge, and that has been a much better experience. Like, I feel like just copy and paste everything I've ever said about any Ilona Andrews book. It's just so much fun. The momentum is there, the humor is there, the cool magic is there, the characters are great. The way that she does kind of like enemy to lovers, is that the romance trope? I'm not a romance girly. But also like she did a kind of, I guess it's what you call a third act breakup. I don't know. But it was kind of like a miscommunication situation, except that it's like all done through communication. Like they are talking just because of circumstances. They're coming at things from different directions and wanting different things and having different motivations. And so the conflict feels very real, even though it also feels like surmountable. Like so often, I think, with other like enemies to lovers type things that I've read, it's more like the guy is a complete asshole and it's kind of hard for him to even ever seem redeemable. But Ilona Andrews just does it so well. I'm super excited. I might even be able to finish that off later today while I fold some washing. So fingers crossed, because I'm loving that. Thank goodness, because this is not doing it for me. Okay, so quick no makeup update. I don't often film without my makeup these days, but it's been a no makeup kind of week. So it's now Saturday, I think. Yesterday, I did have the building inspection for my house. I should be clear, it's my old house that I'm trying to sell so that I can afford to live in my new house. But the council has now randomly decided that it's not properly signed off, even though now having read all the documentation, all the information online, I'm pretty sure it actually is, but they're just being dicks about it. Anyway, I had the building inspection. I was really scared it was going to fail on something that would require like massive amounts of money to fix and be a big drama, or that I wouldn't be able to get it signed off because it would be just impossible. But actually they failed it. They have failed it. They failed it on like easy to fix things mostly. So I just have to get a plumber in next week to look at one thing. And then other than that, it should be fine. So now I can kind of see, even though it's still a disaster, I can kind of see a pathway to things not being a disaster. So that's progress. What I haven't made any progress on is Malice. Honestly, at this point, if there was an audiobook available, I would listen to the audiobook. But there's no way to get my hands on the audiobook of Malice in New Zealand. And it kind of looked like it maybe wasn't even available in the UK. It's all very strange because I think I can get my hands on the second book, or at least the third and the fourth book. I don't know what's happening with that series. It seems to be all messed up for some reason with like the rights in New Zealand or in the UK. Anyway, I can't see myself at this point. I don't know what my fringe is doing, by the way. That's why I keep messing with it. Anyway, you don't really care. So I just don't think at this point that I will be able to finish reading it by the time it returns itself to the library. And I'm kind of thinking of just like giving up, worrying about it next year when I'm perhaps in a better mental state. Will I be? I don't know. I actually think it's still going to take at least another month or two to sort out my house. But anyway, I think maybe I should just give up on Malice for now, worry about it next year, and instead move on to Wind and Truth, which is what I actually want to be reading. So maybe. As well, I did actually finish the audiobook of On the Edge. I can't remember if I told you about the end of it, but as expected, I really liked it. It was exciting. I will say the very ending, I thought it was setting up for the second book in the series. However, the second book in the series is following like a side character and like a completely new character. So it wasn't setting up for that. Because the new characters are still like related to the original characters, I expect at some point we'll kind of see what's happening with the original characters. But I believe this series, like each book in the quartet, is actually following a different character in the same world. So actually it's a little bit hard to talk about the second book without spoilers. We're following a side character who has like changeling abilities. I don't think that's spoilers, as long as I don't tell you anything else about him. So we're following him, and he, I guess, has a lot of issues and has been, I guess he's kind of like an army guy, and he's been pulled into this mission during which he's met this other girl. So this girl is part of this family on the edge where these other people are trying to steal their family's property, and there's a bunch of other drama going on that I'm not sure I totally understood. It was quite like throw you in the deep end to a whole new situation. And then as well, I felt like the pacing at the beginning was a little bit weird because it tried to set you up with this family drama, and then she went off to do something, and it seemed like she went off and did this whole thing, but we didn't get any of that whole thing. Although maybe it wasn't that much, but anyway, we kind of skipped a bit of her story and then ran into the other guy encountering her, and now they're kind of traveling together for reasons. And I mean, clearly, because of the kind of book it is, there's going to be some kind of romance. But there's also like a fair amount of plot there that I'm hoping I will understand better when I pick it up again. I don't know actually how far in I got. Probably not that far. 12%, so not that far. I will say, it's kind of surprising to me that my favorite books at the moment are like fantasy romance, paranormal romance type books, when I normally say I'm not a romance girl, but I do always say I love Ilona Andrews, so it's probably not a surprise that they're helping me through my tough times. Hello. So usually in my vlogs I do try to at least vlog in a few different places, and I feel like I've done a really terrible job of that in this vlog, but maybe that's because I've been a little bit stuck just on house stuff still. However, there is a plumber at my house now, and if he can do his thing, then everything will be done and I won't really have to stress about my house until next year. There will definitely be more stress next year, but it would be nice to just try and forget about it over Christmas. So that's what we're going to try and do as well. So Malice. I returned it to the library and it was saying 2 more people on the queue, and I think it said like a couple of weeks before I would get it back when I put a new hold on it, but it came back straight away. My only guess can be that those 2 people just deferred it, didn't want it right now. I wouldn't be surprised if they were also reading Wind and Truth. So now I kind of have Malice and I could keep reading it, but I'm probably not going to. I'm still probably going to just put it aside for a little while because I have started reading Wind and Truth and it's going so much better than Malice was. Like, I'm so excited and so scared for this last book in the Stormlight Archives, or the last book in this section of the Stormlight Archives. Although I'm maybe not that scared. I would kind of be quite happy if a bunch of characters died. I think that would be the emotional impact that I'm looking for. I think I'm mostly scared that the ending won't be as satisfying as I'm hoping that it will be, but still, just the prologue had so much interesting information about the world that I am very excited. So I will now be starting a new vlog where I will be reading this. And this vlog I feel like has been kind of a fail. Oh, luckily I did read On the Edge, which I really loved. I haven't made any more progress on Bayou Moon. Is that what it's called? I think so. I didn't make that much progress on Malice. I think I got about 40% of the way through. And I don't know how I feel about that series. If you've read that series, like, tell me when it gets good. Tell me why the first book isn't representative of the rest of the series. It can't be, right? Or otherwise, how would this series be so hyped? Or maybe the end of Malice gets really exciting? I just don't know. Anyway, let's chat down in the comments. Do subscribe if you'd like to see more of my bookish videos. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.